they call themselves the VET, they're the Veterinary Emergency Team, and I think one of the frustrations I encountered in working in emergency response was sometimes a sense of helplessness. We could do damage assessment, we could assist and coordinate resources on occasion. Now that they have the horseback team, they can actually do more work, actually move animals where needed, and where safe, and that type of thing. But this veterinary emergency team that I'm about to talk about brought a new angle. It brought actual veterinary medicine delivered locally to animals in need and animals that have been rescued from natural disasters. And most of this presentation today is going to be angled toward natural disasters and animals that actually have injuries from those disasters. You'll see a lot of small and companion animals because of the nature of the disasters that this team has responded to since its inception. But that's not to say that they aren't also a competent group to assist in these larger disease responses. And they may well have that opportunity. We're crossing our fingers. The last batch of turkeys that we tested in Texas were negative for the HiPath AI that's been nailing turkeys to our north. So, and I'm standing in mainly for Dr. Wesley Bissett. He is an A&M grad. He has a degree in epidemiology and environmental toxicology, PhD, and he served as a food animal clinician after several years of practice post vet school. He came back to the clinics, served as a food animal practitioner there, taught students, and now has kind of graduated into this role in coordinating this emergency team, which I think you'll see he's done a wonderful job, and it's a pretty amazing resource, and stands as an example. It's a resource that may be available to you if you need it. It also is an example of things to come, perhaps in your homes, your states, your colleges of veterinary medicine, because many of you come from states that also have the university there. So just a little bit of the history at Texas A&M, and I think this team is unique nationwide, so I don't just need to make this about Texas. But we have had we are a state that encounters a lot of pretty terrible natural disasters, whether they be drought and fire, the hurricanes, we get the windstorms coming down, a whole slew of things can happen. We don't have the terrible earthquakes in California, but Hurricane Rita, they ended up using the College of Veterinary Medicine as a human hospital during Rita, so they actually provisioned the place to take care of overflow of people off the coast, people that were translocated from hospitals and nursing facilities in their beds, etc. I mean, we're talking IVs are running, and veterinarians and the staff are taking care of people at that point. That was a mixed bag. I mean, they were needed. Basically, the military decided that was a good call, and they could make it, along with the governor. Then comes Hurricane Ike, and the scene had changed a little bit, and they were better utilized, I think, in not so much handling people as handling hundreds of small animals, and in addition to a few hundred large animals. People mostly were moving their horses, and so the college once again stepped into that role of being a center for where people could bring, a shelter. Okay, if you know anything about Texas, I don't have a slide in here. College Station is ideally suited in fair proximity to the coast, but not usually in the worst of the storm and its trajectory. We'll get hammered a little bit when the storms come inland, but we're just far enough off the coast that we can offer shelter, and that's part of what the college has done. So that kind of got them started doing that, but things have changed beyond that. It was in 2009, and there will be a slide later on that you see that Dee and I went over to the CVM, and we kind of proposed an idea, can we get something started with you guys? And they were receptive, and it's a fortunate thing. So we may have had some of the first ideas to invite them to participate, but I will say that Wesley and now Deb Zoran have, they've run miles with this project, and they've been operating largely on soft money. So as you're looking, how did they have some boon just granted to them? There were a few occasions where they came upon, let's say, some equipment that another group was kind of shedding that equipment. In one case, it's a big semi rig. You'll see a picture of it. It's pretty impressive. That was somewhat, good fortune. But I will say the rest of it's been extremely hard work, and it hasn't always been a sure path that they've been on. So that is part of what's happened. The impact though that this is having on them, it's really distinct. They didn't expect what this might mean to them. Wesley didn't. Deb didn't. They didn't know what it meant to the students. They didn't have a curriculum when we started. We didn't know what it would mean. We didn't know how far they'd go. But these are the things, that they found to be life-changing, and they say that in the true sense of the word. And because they're dealing with a lot of these people in these natural disasters, especially fire and that type of destruction, they lose everything they had. Most of their worldly possessions, at least, are gone. Their animals may be gone. And so that's when you're encountering them, and there's a lot of meaning, emotion wrapped up in that all at once, because there's a lot of people affected. This particular picture, the background, I'll tell you more about it, is Bastrop Fire. So that was around I think it was 2011 drought. D, was it 2011?
Yes.
All right. So 2011, we were hammered by probably one of our worst droughts ever in Texas history, and we have bad droughts. You saw the pictures this morning of the drought centered over Texas, and we're used to being dry, like we're used to it, but this was really dry, and that's the picture you see there. But going on about what they've been kind of learning through this team is this the selfless service, and again I'll talk about all these things in a little more detail. But they've got the students involved regularly now in this fourth-year curriculum. It's a requirement that they go through this in their fourth year. And that's a pretty big deal. Even carving, I can tell you, carving out a piece of the veterinary curriculum takes an act of their Congress, so to speak, because it's packed. It's really packed. You got to try to cram all this stuff in everybody's heads in what ends up being a few short years, and try to make them competent to practice when they go out. But they found it career-altering, and this is coming from, Deb Zoran. She also had a conflict. I mean, they're doing some legislative stuff literally today. But, she's a career internist, super veterinarian, very good at medicine, and they found this career-altering, and it gives them and it gives these people hope. This guy here in the picture on the lower left with the cat, his house was completely incinerated. His pets, he thought, were completely incinerated. He had some goats and the like. I mean, it was a small plot he lived on. Bastrop is semi-rural. It's rural. And anyway, he came in, and they went out. Search team had gone out to the house, and they actually recovered his cat. So the cat, along with his, he didn't lose any of the members of his family, but the cat was all that was left of everything else. And so he was, it became a real focal point. And, he literally put his head on, I mean, he's not usually a soft guy, I don't think, but he puts his head on Dr. Biscuit, and starts crying just when they recovered this cat and asked them to save the cat. Well, for once, with this veterinary team, they can save the cat. And this cat has become a lot more important than your average, house cat. It was an average house cat. Now it's a symbol of everything these people have left. And this is a story that repeats itself. So, this is the deployment history. So they're doing a good job of staying active. They're linked up with the Animal Health Commission very closely. The Animal Health Commission is lead on animal issues in the state. The location of the college is opportune in that we are close to Disaster City. They are closely linked to Texas Task Force 1, which is a very, very active, human-oriented, I should say, disaster response team. They have search dogs. They can go to New York City to do the World Trade Center, all that kind of stuff. Those are the type of things they do. They do it in Texas. They do it nationally, and they're closely linked as well. So some of these missing person searches, they may be just starting out with support of the working dogs, the search and rescue dogs, which are some of the most important tools that, for instance, Texas Task Force 1 will field. Those dogs are on point. They're finding victims with their nose in rubble, in fire-torn, burned out areas, etc. So in hurricane debris piles, that you can get DMOR teams out there to recover pieces. It's a morbid picture, but people perish. So this is just the list of the activities they stay plugged into, and they're doing a good job. They do as good a job as anybody I've seen at exercising, and that's what it really takes to stay at the height of preparedness and competence with an active team. So, and these are all exercises. So those were deployments, and these are exercises. And again, we have this disaster city thing there in College Station. If you ever come down, you can give me a call, or you can talk with the guys from Animal Health Commission and go out there. It's pretty impressive. It's one of the largest fire training facilities in the country, and they bring people from all over the world there to train. Because they have rail cars turned over and buildings that can burn and all these convenient things for running exercises. And that's some of what's there. So we're going on to this, just kind of exemplifying their responses and what they do. And this is the prelude to a disaster. So this was 2011. It was one of the driest periods on record in Texas. I lived in the hill country. Everything was just turned to a crisp. There was no water. It hadn't rained. And not dissimilar to some of the winds you hear about in Southern California that light those fires off and blow them around the hills down there. We had a lot of gusty northern winds, and it was a tinderbox. And then this branch fell on a power line, and it lit it off, the Bastrop Fire. Once again, Texas geography, there's something called the Lost Pines. There's a group of loblolly pines that grew into a large forest right there around Bastrop, and outside of that area there are no pine forests until you get to East Texas. Bastrop is much more central Texas. I mean, you're talking hundreds of miles of separation, but it's a significant area of these really mature pine trees, really beautiful, and they lit on fire, and it was incredible. I mean, it was extremely dramatic and devastating. So that's a picture of looking toward Bastrop, the town, looking back toward the pine trees. Ultimately, 32,000 acres burned, and it proved to be one of the largest wildland-urban interface fires in Texas's and in the country's history. So it was burning people's homes. It wasn't really isolated very well from the edge of town. There was no edge. It just kind of people were living amongst in this forest of pine trees. And they were fortunate in it, starting evacuations. The fire spread rapidly, and for a time it burned almost uncontrolled despite efforts. We're talking aerial support and the like. The winds were just too much, and all these semi-dried out pine trees were just ripe for going up like candles. I mean, all of them. So that gives you an idea. Over here, this is the city center, and this is the area that was burning. And you can see here, these are all basically residential streets. And so it was right on top of them. And they call it the Bastrop Complex Fire, but these are just examples. And having seen a few wildland fires myself now, working with the Animal Health Commission, even out in West Texas, they have peculiarities. You'll have, like Mendel said, one ranch, the cows were decimated. The next ranch, only a handful died. The fire, yes, by and large, it devastated things, but you'll see a picture, I think, in just a second, where you've got the house that isn't even there anymore, and then you've got the playhouse back here, the kids' playhouse, which is made out of wood, and it's fine. It's hard to explain. I've seen wildfires burn right up to a row of old, hay bales, round bales. Didn't touch them. They weren't wet. There's 50 bales lined up alongside the road. Everything else is charred. So there's some peculiarities, but overall it was quite a deal. And some of the trees you see, even though they may still have some leaves up top, many of them ultimately succumbed. They had forestry groups in there cutting and processing these trees for a few years after this happened. There's the picture of that playhouse. And once again, this is somebody's driveway, and no house left. And there's the car and the carport. So maybe they would have done well to put their car under the carport with the boat. I don't know. It's hard to know. And they didn't know. Nobody knew where to go except to get out if they could. So the veterinary emergency team mobilized on September 7th to support. Officially, they were called out in conjunction with Texas Task Force 1 search and rescue canines. And they had a secondary mission of triaging and stabilizing injured animals. And really, once the word got out that they were there, pretty quickly everybody was bringing any injured animals to them. I think they ended up processing 250 to 300 different animals, ranging in sizes, probably most of them small-ish, like goats on down in size to cats and dogs. And they reunited animals with their owners. That was a really nice part of the effort. All these other things you've heard about today are still important. The donations management, not letting these uncontrolled groups into a controlled area. There always seem to be some groups, especially when it comes to reuniting animals. Some groups come in and seems like they are ready to confiscate animals and take them and never reunite them. Some of these folks you just don't want in there at all. So these are all things to keep in mind as you manage something like this, where companion animals do get involved, where you are managing an urban interface. At an urban interface. The search and rescue dogs, you guys know these animals, whether they're working in the military, Texas Task Force 1, at the airport, they're high value. They go through very rigorous training programs, very selective. There's a lot of dogs that are they're rejected. They're not euthanized or something. They're just put out of the program. They're not going to make it. These are the elite canines, and these leather booties weren't going to cut it. As it ended up, the terrain was too hot, with pockets of cinders and ash and what was left over from the fire, and they couldn't put them at that much risk. They didn't want to work them, but they couldn't just run their dogs literally into the ashes. So. The vet team, their first mission in supporting Task Force 1 was to support these dogs. And, they predicted they'd only be able to work 2 days before being rotated out. But, things changed. I will say veterinarians can improvise, and the vet team did the same for these search and rescue dogs. They made up a different combination of a boot. It was a custom-made wrap, ultimately with duct tape on the outside. Duct tape's always useful. And these dogs were put to work and could stay at work actually for up to 6 days. And they did a combination of these foot wraps and fluid therapy. So the dogs were on IVs, maintaining hydration when they got back. They were being checked out, not unlike you would check out like an Iditarod dog or something like that at a check station. When they're being pushed, it's best to keep them in top health, and the IVs and whatnot helped with that, along with protecting their feet. Protecting dogs' feet next to their nose, that's how they're getting around, and all this rubble type of stuff, or ashes, or whatever it may be. it's pretty important. So you can see here with it was hot weather, it was dry, and that dog is there with his handler, and you can see the IV line running into his leg there. So he's getting some fluids, and he's gonna come back the next day ready to work. So, I mean, part of the message is if you build it, they do end up coming, and Bastrop was a good example of that. They didn't go in there trumpeting the fact that they were there to save all the animals, but people started bringing them. I mean, the Animal Health Commission was out doing damage assessment, working with different Forest Service and others to see what was going on. Pretty soon the word was out that the vet team was there, and they're a trusted resource. That's important. You can trust their competence. You can trust their professionalism. And that, whether you're the sheriff or you're the Animal Health Commission or, you're the pet owner or the landowner that had their place burned up. So this was an example, though, of an integrated response with all of these folks playing a part. And this kind of shows you the some of the groups too that helped reunite these people with, through records and ID and just taking, creating boards where people could congregate and put up petitions for, being reunited with their animals. This is outside of one of the trailers, just checking out this dog and with the responders there. And so this is, for us, at least, the next generation of veterinarians coming out of school, it's not all just about the animals and their owners and the response. It's also about, using this as a teaching tool, because that's the college's first mission. One of their first missions, I should say, is to educate. And I think these veterinarians have an edge, and I think they're going to be, because that's the professional curriculum. You get out, and most of them are going to be plunked down somewhere in society, serving the community in one shape, form, or another. A lot of them now are going on internship and residency, but they're going to end up somewhere. And this is equipping them. This is giving them this other view. As TR said, the students are helping do these animal issues plans out in the counties. So that's in the peacetime. They'll do training, education at the college, and then they're going to get a field trip, so to speak, out to a county of jurisdiction to help them for a day or two, setting up their plans, meeting with the locals, hopefully recruiting the local veterinarians, seeing themselves in that role in a few months, being out there themselves. So the students are, it's a good thing for them. And, it's the first clinical rotation in emergency preparedness and response. I know that Dr. Bissett and Zoran have been to other colleges now, and they've been talking about the curriculum. They may have gone to Missouri recently, and just introduced this and shared what they've learned. Because the curriculum part is really important to keeping the students plugged in all the time amidst all this response and equipment and Texas Task Force 1. Those aren't student-friendly groups. Task Force 1 doesn't train students, but when you plug this whole group on with them, kind of on the back supporting, you get both. You accomplish many different things. So they work with county leaders. They perform these risk assessments. They focus, as it says here, on operating guidelines. All of these things we've talked about in evacuation, sheltering, the county needs. The counties don't always think through everything. They think about maybe the most recent problem, or they think about something they know about. They don't think about the whole gamut. And it's important to kind of address that and to ask a few questions beyond where they may be comfortable in their preparedness. Because as TR and everybody said, they do start as local issues, and they have some of these counties have decent local resources. Keeping all these things prioritized during a disaster can be trouble. So it's worth injecting reality into that as well, because they're going to take their heavy equipment elsewhere, or they're not going to be available to you. You have to plan for some of that up front. But these are core competencies that Dr. Bissett feels he can deliver, and that this curriculum basically delivers when other pieces of the curriculum can't. So, or don't emphasize as strongly. Leadership, collaboration, the systems management. All these students are getting ICS, so that's nice up front. They come out certificated, and they're getting trained in communication. Certainly, this multicultural awareness. You're running across all kinds of situations out there in these responses. Every state, Texas certainly is cosmopolitan in how it's who's out there, how it's composed, and what and their reactions to disasters are just as cosmopolitan as the makeup of the people. It can be challenging, just dealing with the people. So they adapt to changing environments, and they have a commitment to lifelong learning. That's what they try to imbue. I've covered some of this. Tool they gives the students tools to be better prepared personally, professionally, and be part of their communities. Early on, before this vet formed, I had classmates who were in the path, let's say, of Ike, because I think I tore up the east side of Texas, and it wreaked a lot of havoc in other parts of Texas that weren't just coastal. It wasn't all just the tidal surge that sucked away all the baby calves or anything. It was also a big part of the state without power for a long time, railroads that were shut down, poultry houses that were running out of fuel for their closed houses and their air conditioning systems, running out of feed because it was delivered on rail. All this type of stuff happens. And so the veterinarians in the communities, those who were equipped or took it upon themselves to participate, they had a role. And these guys are going out. They know their role much better. So they take their classes and they do their computer scenarios. They have some simulations on these computer screens. This is in one of the trailers. It's a response trailer, but it can be converted very quickly from being a classroom. So they kind of get them out of the bricks and mortar building. Granted, fourth year is a good year because you're with animals and you're handling horses and the like, but this is it's a nice departure for a week or two. They're out there in the trailer, and that's Dr. Bissett there kind of teaching them. So this is another disaster that took place in 2013, West Texas. You probably remember a fertilizer plant caught fire, and I think it's the anhydrous ammonia that they had stockpiled there. It went off like a big bomb, and it basically really destroyed a big part of this town. It was a small town, and the fertilizer plant was pretty central to the town. It's a farming community along I-35, and when it blew up, it destroyed a lot of stuff, and was really bad for West. You can see houses here, and not all these places were in direct proximity. It was a big explosion. And created a lot of problems. That's the actual site that went up, and then you can see houses and the school, the track. A lot of stuff around there was destroyed. Not to mention the site looked like a bomb had gone off, because essentially that's what it was. So things were all blown to bits. That's the gymnasium there at the school. Anyway, it was a response exercise. They had again. This is the urban interface. Maybe a semi-rural town, but there were small animals, and a lot of emotions were running high, and there was a need, and I think it was good. They were doing some decon. They're washing these dogs up, making sure they're okay. and they're adopting all these procedures. I mean, they're paying attention to the C. Burney type events. So they're trying to, they can be a resource. So they're doing the curricula, but you guys, if you have a inkling to talk to them, please do. They're EMACable. You can use EMAC and try to, bring them in if you have a disaster. I think they bring a lot of expertise, and they're constantly growing it. They don't sleep. Visit Zoran. Dr. Zoran is standing there, and the sunglasses kind of in action pose. They don't rest. They've been growing this program, and it really shows. So there's animal control. They're doing some physical exams. Probably the students are actually reuniting pets with owners again in the West. People had to congregate. They had to get the hell out of there because they didn't know what had gone on. People were hurt. Glass had blown in on them. All this kind of stuff. They were cut up. It was a mess. So there's the total. They triaged 122 animals. They had the faculties involved. So a lot of it, can be a win-win story if you get the right mix. And they had 2 trailers and an ambulatory truck. So we'll go through some slides in a minute. This was that's Bentley. So we have some. Animal Health Commission had a role in setting up care for Bentley. Because everybody threw their hands up and didn't know what to do about Ebola. I mean, everybody followed that on the news, whether it be in people or now their pets after the Spanish dog incident, mandated euthanasia in the face of maybe ignorance about whether Ebola could be communicated by a dog. We knew they could muster an antibody titer after exposure in West Africa, but we didn't know if they could shed it or pass it through or just keep it inside. So Bentley was a big question mark, and that Nina Pham contracted Ebola when carrying what was the fellow's name again in the hospital in Dallas? Lawrence or I don't know. Thomas Duncan, thank you. So Thomas Duncan had Ebola. Nina Pham contracted it. Hey, I'd throw a candy to you if I. But we're almost finished. So, so this is the Dallas Animal Services. There's a long tale of how this dog ended up in quarantine. There was a lot of unknowns. So you're going to see some pictures in a minute. This was really, you had to basically treat it like a BL3/BL4 agent, which it is. Should have been treated like that, honestly, in the human medical community from the get-go. Probably wouldn't have had as much confusion there at Dallas Presbyterian. But dog was in the same boat. And here comes the vet team in coordination with Animal Health Commission. And so they knew that dogs could get infected. They knew that they could maybe pass the virus out of them, shed it, or they didn't know these things. They had to assume them. I'm sorry, I'm kind of misspeaking. And they knew that they tried to assume that they could transmit it to people. So they had to treat it as such, as I just said. And here they are getting suited up, most appropriately. This dog was about to receive some really dramatic care. He ended up being kept in an old military, on an old military installation outside of Dallas in the country. There really wasn't power. It was an old officer's quarters, I believe, a house and you'll see the kitchen where Bentley was set up with his home, and all the best care. And so there's Bentley going into his cage. All the floor, of course, is protected with disposable, disinfectable items, along with the people being fully suited up. If you ever did the AGRIC program over in Anniston, similar training put to use here. Taping your cuffs, your number of gloves being worn. I think they're wearing PAPRs there, so they've got the ventilation coming in with HEPA filtration. And Bentley's playing ball. It's a dog's life. And it proved really important. Again, really symbolic. And as I said earlier, I think that this kind of thing responses, whether it be to small or large animals, cattle, and the like, because they can work cattle too. Those are perfect examples of, there is a heart out there. Agriculture. I mean, this is A&M. It's an ag school. West Bissett is a large animal practitioner through and through, and they do care a lot. And these are perfect examples of it. So Bentley, very active, and apparently Ebola was not affecting Bentley much. If he had it in him, but they did a PCR. I think they were doing PCR tests on these dogs. Is that right, TR?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know where they stood or validated this PCR. Probably the military or somebody, because early on the military was toying with this, and they probably did jump through some hoops and loops to. Yeah. So they probably have some secret stock of doggy validated PCRs or something. I don't know. But
they didn't want to look very hard, though, truthfully, because it wasn't validated, and you didn't want to have a false positive, because then you were screwed. So
yeah,
we did the minimum we needed to do with that dog.
All right, so you got 2 PCR tests.
I'm not kidding. If you got a test that wasn't validated, it was a suspicious, then what?
Yeah.
Literally, we did not want to do one thing more than the very minimum, because we didn't really think it was a problem. And then it was going to be a huge issue with the media, because they put a Facebook page up. Dallas City had made it a superhero, and then we'd had to euthanize a superhero. It would have been awkward, to say the least. So, right, yeah, you can't euthanize a superhero. They raised a lot of money off that dog.
Yeah. Well,
there's a whole other story, but I'm going to let you tell your story, Matt. It's a good story to right on.
There's always another side to the story.
At the bar later.
Yeah. All right, Pete. So, Bentley doing his thing, getting taken care of. Ultimately, whether or not, all these stories combined, I mean, it is good the dog went back to Nina Pham. You'll see those pictures in a minute. And that was definitely, I think it was worth it. It was an expensive endeavor. I mean, it cost multiple thousands of dollars to field this team up there, to support the dog, to do the PPE. Could it have been done on a more massive scale? I don't know. We've got to be better prepared for the likes of Ebola next time. It's the only thing I can say. That or something else. I mean, we've got to be on edge and have tests that can, and the military has some interest in that. They do, because they were going to field working dogs to West Africa for, I don't know if they call it like force protection or what, patrolling and that type of thing around these field hospitals, and they were going to have to quarantine them 21 days on the way back in, and I don't know how much of that they've actually done to date, but those were some of their concerns on the calls. So Bentley's receiving care, everybody's wearing their PPE, not taking any risks. He had the 21-day quarantine, as I just mentioned, similar to what the military proposed and what people were going through. It was just mirrored on down to canines. And he was removed from the house, Nina's apartment, on October 13th. And they were deployed to Dallas on the 16th. And they did they bled the dog twice, day 8 and 17. Blood, urine, and feces for PCR, real-time PCR. So there they are, putting stuff in bio bags, C&D, clean, dirty line, all the stuff a lot of you know. And it's just being put to use in this old officer's quarters house. And I think Bentley's somewhere behind that door with the little round glass in it. So this is, of course, after Bentley's been given the okay. It's Dr. Zoran holding him. They're giving him a bath there, get him all cleaned up, and good little dog. Hopefully, King Charles doesn't have any heart issues. But on this day, he's really happy. Nina's happy, and once again, animal health and emergency response. Here you go. She was a student. My wife had taught her in high school, and so she was a really exemplary student and a really good person. So I'm glad she made it through for sure. So there was a practicality, you know, and the vet they had a place in stepping in and doing this. Most of the veterinarians, there might have been some veterinarians who were willing and could have been trained up, but these guys were on standby, so they came in and did it. They could have trained more veterinarians if they needed to, if they'd had a volunteer corps. But in this case, we didn't have to. That's good. So you'll see some pictures here of some of their equipment and trailers, and they've kind of come by this over time. Actually, the diagnostic lab where I'm at, we recently gave them a trailer that we had equipped for some mobile laboratory purposes and weren't using enough, so we passed it over to them. So they added it to their collection, and that's the big trailer that's pulled by a semi. That's one of those fortuitous things they came upon, and I think it serves that's their classroom trailer when it's not out and deployed. And it's pretty cool. It's pretty substantial. And they also go to a number of different shows, just so you know. I mean, they go to the local Homeland Security, they go to a Panhandle deal, and I mean, if there was a need, they might be able to go beyond Texas. I don't know if they do or don't, honestly, right now. But they do pretty good. They put on a pretty good show at trade shows, you know, emergency response, disaster preparedness type shows. And that was, yeah, that's the trailer we gave them. So they were going to be recommissioning that, re-decaling it, redoing it a little bit. Yeah, I think that's inside of that trailer. Yeah, we got a biosafety cabinet there. Yeah. So it'll be pretty handy. There's a truck, and you can see some pictures on exercise here, and another one. And yeah, you know, it's a small army going on. They can set up generators and tents, and they've gotten really well practiced at it. They also know the medicine. You know, they're getting faculty. They're getting the vet faculty. The people who taught me, they can still teach me a few things. So they're doing the work out there. And we got ambulatory. So that kind of wraps it up.